Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy, the B-Ball Prophet. This is the Truth in Sports podcast. Thank y'all for joining us today. Got a special guest with us, a good friend of mine, one of the bigger names in the basketball training community. Probably seen him on Instagram, YouTube. Been working with helping other trainers build their business, build their brand for many years. My brother Myson Jones. So I'm very happy to have him on the podcast today, man. How you feeling, my brother?
It's an honor to be here, man. I feel great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, a couple years ago when I first started to hit the scene on social media, I was following Myson, and we had a podcast discussing a lot of different topics. Man, I hit him up, and I was like, man, can I jump on? And he didn't really know who I was. I really wasn't known at that point, but he gave me an opportunity to come on and give my thoughts and get me some exposure. So I'm blessed for the opportunity to give that back.
No, I'm grateful too, man. And you paying it forward and reciprocating says a lot about you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. So without further ado, man, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your basketball background, how you got started in the training game, and kind of what you got going on right now.
So I'm working and learning on how to talk about myself. So if it's too concise, let me know.
Yeah.
I grew up. I played college basketball at Anderson University, a pretty competent D2 in South Carolina. Started
Yep.
working in corporate, didn't like it. Was making 50 cold calls an hour, and went to
Mm,
like three jobs in 3 years, I would say. And
mm,
finally decided to quit, use some of those sales skills, a little bit of sales skills I learned in training. I actually saw a trainer who I talk to till this day, and he finished the session, made more money in the entire session than I made in a week. And I thought,
wow.
if he can do this, I can do it too. And
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. So where you based out of currently?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville, South Carolina. I got you, man. I got you. So talk a little bit about kind of your time playing in college, and kind of when you got out of school, what made you decide, like, did you want to try to go pro? Did you just want to jump into career? Kind of like what was that process?
That's a great question. I was an average college player. I wish I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
Best year I probably had like 15 points a game, right under 1,000 points in scoring. So nothing spectacular in my career, but I played with some really, really good players. Uh, when I was going towards my senior year, I kind of had this shift, man, to where basketball wasn't as fun anymore, and I wanted to think about
Mhm.
life, and I
Yeah.
wanted to. I'll be honest, I was money focused. I really wanted to see what it was like to not work my body out as much and more
Yeah.
so work my mind,
Okay.
and I focused on money. And I thought I wanted to go to financial advising, Wall Street, investment banking type stuff until I realized the grind and I had to move. I didn't want to move, nor did I
Yeah.
want to go play overseas. I was just done with basketball, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
And like I said about the corporate story, I've learned how to sell, started a training business, and then started what I truly wanted to do, which was help other trainers more so than be a trainer myself.
Mm.
But I saw that the training was honestly much faster cash than the software that we were working to build before selling
Okay.
it.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. Let me ask you this. So, what is your, I guess, like mission statement of your training business? Like, what is your main goals? What is your overlying like message that you're trying to get out there? Or I guess you could say like, what is your mission for training outside of just making money?
It's so our business name is Hoops University, and the goal is to teach decades of wisdom in every session and to help athletes graduate to a higher degree of fulfillment from the game of basketball, whether that's ball itself, more importantly, from life. And we don't do it perfectly, but we're working on
Yeah,
actually living that out every single session.
I got you. I got you. I got you. What do you feel like, I guess, from a business perspective, is the biggest challenges that trainers have today to really get and build a lucrative training business?
I know our challenges. I think the challenges that I see from those I talk to is marketing and sales first and foremost, and then really it is rudimentary level finding gym space, consistent gym
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, yeah. I think, for myself, I think, I started training in my hometown of Boston, moved on to Louisville, Houston, was in Las Vegas, back to Houston. And I think all those things, were true in terms of challenges, right? Obviously trying to find consistent gyms. I think when I came on your podcast before, I talked about the market being oversaturated,
Mhm.
and that was a couple of years ago. So I can imagine is even more oversaturated. So what do you feel about the I guess the state of the training industry today as it relates to the value of actual youth development, um, maybe compared to maybe the youth development system someplace like in Europe.
Man, I'll be honest. I look at that content on social media, and I don't know as much as you would think or someone would think about it. I can understand the argument that we should model the European style with more practices than games. And I can see why someone would say that because of how underdeveloped a lot of youth basketball players are, how lacking in understanding of things that we would expect them to know, but they actually don't know.
Yeah.
Um, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I asked a clarifying question. So I guess to what level is the training industry either helping to
Mm.
develop players better, or how much is the training industry an actual detriment to youth development, you believe?
I think there are sides. There's good apples and bad apples. There are sides that get caught up in the social media craze and want to train for the social clout and the social currency. And then there is a side that truly does want to benefit youth athletes and may not be as knowledgeable about the social media portion of it. So they're not as loud about it or as known, but they genuinely do try to help and teach the right way. uh, I do think the bad overshadows the good. I do think there's more unprofessionalism there and poor teaching than there is good teaching. I could be wrong about that. I don't know the percentages, but
Yeah.
either that's true or it just seems like it's more prevalent to be on my feed to see some of the bad teaching than see the good teaching.
Yeah, yeah. So how much do you feel like, and you kind of answered this, partially. So how do you feel like the social media algorithms affect what players are really working on? And so right now, I guess like the big thing that everyone's doing is like everyone's doing skits, right?
Mm.
But how does that affect um the perception of the young people who are looking in terms of what basketball development truly is?
I think some skits are educational. Some skits are actually good, and I think in some regards the skits actually helps to get understanding or give understanding to athletes who otherwise wouldn't have paid attention to it. Which you could argue if they didn't pay attention to it, then they may not be ones that are going to go as far as they could in the game in general.
Yeah,
Uh, but I would say some skits are good educational wise, but other skits are not good, like teaching things that really shouldn't be taught, are
yeah,
exceptions, not norms for most athletes, and are there for entertainment more so than education itself.
yeah, 100%. So when you're working with athletes, I guess what is kind of the training philosophy that you have with working with players?
That's funny, man. I was supposed to be interviewing three guys: Peter, Shane. I hope we talk about that conversation you had with Peter on the pod. But
Mm,
I had a setup with Peter, Shane, and Micah about the training industry as a whole, and I was going to
yeah,
ask Michael about constraint led approach and
yeah,
his TDSE, this technique driven. And I don't know the full acronym there too.
yeah,
Skill enhancement, technique driven skill enhancement. Sorry, and
yes,
for me, I use whatever the athlete needs. And
yeah,
it definitely is a mix. Like if they need small sided games, great. If they need some more skill enhancement where we're working on things. You pull a cone out or something that can get them in certain levels. Like I'll do that, but I prefer
Mm,
a blend, like beginning with skill enhancement if we can, and then go into the small sided games and the
yeah,
block practices and whatever other methodologies that people are throwing out there now.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think mixing all those things based on what the player needs is probably the best practice. I don't think one stands alone, right? You just by itself. I think it's a combination of all those ideas. It's you mentioned Peter, the conversation we had. Um, so I guess the conversation started with a statement that you made as it relates to group training versus one-on-one training, right? And I think I think you've kind of been one who've pushed group training. I think even in terms of your mentorship of trainers, in terms from a business perspective, right? You're really helping trainers scale their business, right? And obviously, and the more kids that you can have in 1 per hour block, right? Obviously you're going to make more money. And I know you had mentioned earlier at the beginning of the podcast, like seeing a trainer in one session make more than you made in a week, and I'm sure that was a multi kid session that you saw. So I guess my question is what what is the value in terms of the training from your perspective? Is it more valuable to you to try to make the most money in the shortest amount of time, or is it less or equally as valuable to do one-on-one sessions where you may make less money, but it's more relationship driven?
I think I think two things can be true. I for sure the goal for a business is to make as much profit as possible and provide the most value to a customer as possible. I think sometimes those one-on-ones do that. I also would argue that if a kid's not working out, and it depends on who we're talking about. Like if it's a pro and we need to work on something in a very detailed manner, then for sure let's talk through one-on-ones. But for the most part, a lot of kids aren't working on their game individually at home with the person who really is the biggest coach that they're going to engage with in their day, which is themselves.
Mm,
So I do think the relationship is important. And those one on ones, man, I have some the deepest relationships with certain athletes because of the tenure that we've trained, but also,
yeah,
like you said, those one on ones too. Um, and you can feel it sometimes in a group where an athlete really needs to work on something, but are you going to leave the 99 and go to the one where the
right,
99 is
right,
sitting there? And that's something I'm talking to our teammates about frequently too, and how to try to navigate those things, and
yeah,
we'll stay afterwards or we'll go beforehand to have those one-on-one times. But the first thing you said, for sure, it is to maximize the time that we have so we can get the most return on that cost that we have. So I've working on rewiring my brain to, you know what, the money that we make is a consequence of the level of service we provide. So the goal is to provide the highest level of service so that we can get the top dollar possible per hour.
yeah. No, 100% make perfect sense. I think for me, when I have people on the podcast, and I always ask, like, what is the mission? What's driving you to be in the training industry and work with youth? And everyone has different reasons. And for me, my mission was always to impact lives first and foremost, and push people to a greater level of righteousness and self-awareness, and to really kind of work with those who kind of were underdogs, underrated, overlooked, right? And help build confidence in them to help them get to a high level. One of my kids that I've been working with out of Las Vegas, kid, I don't know, you've maybe seen him on social media. He's got the prosthetic leg. He was out there playing and with DeMarcus Cousins, Devontae Freeman, and he's blowing up. He's a kid that I found in 24-hour fitness training someone else. I look down, I see this kid going crazy, and I look closer, and the kid, he got a prosthetic leg. So when I get into a dialogue, like with Peter, who I like Peter's stuff. I always follow his stuff. There's times where I don't always agree with everything he says. I as a former college coach, it's hard for me to see someone who hasn't coached at that level be so critical of colleges, because yes, there are some coaches that do things old school way, but I know that I was part of trying to do of developing players in a newer, more innovative way, and I know that I'm not the only one, nor the best one. But you know, my thing is that you got to choose. Do I want to be Do I want to be relevant, or do I want to be social media popular? And I wanted to be relevant and transform lives. And yes, there's plenty of money I may have left on the table. There's a bunch of followers and views that could be left on the table. But my challenge to all trainers is to, obviously, yes, we're in a business, but when you go and you make a statement like that he made, well, I can just go do 10 TikTok videos and make the same amount of money. To me, that screams that this is about you and it's not about the players. What would you say to that comment?
Yeah, I want to answer the first thing. I think
Yeah,
it's so to answer your first question or your most recent question. Yeah, I
yeah,
think P's definitely trying to make money. I think that's his priority. I think he's
yeah,
definitely clear about that.
yeah,
Um, and I think people have their disagreements with him or view him in certain ways. I'm learning, and as a friend, like I see him pretty frequently, but
yeah,
people have their thoughts about him for different reasons. For you, I didn't know it was because of the his perspective on the coaches and their drills, whether it's modern or outdated. Somebody else may not like it because of a skit that he did where he's teaching kids how to shoot with a certain routine or body positioning that really
yeah,
isn't safe for most kids and that might get them hurt. Like I've seen and I'm hearing more things, but what I respect from P is he's just straight up about it. You know what I mean? Like he's
yeah.
he's
No, hundred
straight up like
percent.
I'm trying to feed my family. I'm trying to do this,
Yeah,
and I think he and Shane obviously are at the top. I would say Shane is more on the basketball side of
yeah,
trying to stick to the in-person training piece, right?
right,
I think he's one that, and I've seen them. They're both popular. I would argue that they're both relevant for sure. I think P's relevant in certain ways. He doesn't train in person, so maybe not as relevant to people in that capacity. But
right,
Shane for sure. Like I've seen kids go up to him and it's like, "Hey, are you Shane? Or is this you on this video?"
right, right,
And I think with that respect level, he gets the attention of the athletes. And if he teaches them something, then they're going to be more likely to apply it, whether or not they have an in-person local trainer.
yeah.
Um, but what was the most recent question again?
Well,
What my
I
thought?
guess no. I mean, I think you just. I guess I wanted your comments and thoughts on what I said. I think you answered that. No, I think, and again, that's no diss to Pete. Like I said, there's a lot of his stuff that I do like. I do respect someone that is open and honest about what they're trying to do. You can never get mad at that. And obviously, from a business perspective, what is the goal? To make the most money. Can't argue that. My next question is being someone who mentors and works with trainers. There was another statement that he made one time, that me and him went back and forth, and he said it was more important to be good at social media than at training. So for a someone that's getting into the training game, what would you tell them to focus on? So for me, I wanted to be the best trainer, just like when I hooped. I wanted to be the best player. I wanted to be one of the best in the art of training. I wanted to be some of them. I wanted to have the most knowledge, right? I really wanted to, like, if I spent a week with Gannon Baker, and we'd be eating out somewhere, and he'd be like, "Man, I need 6 ice reads for the pick and roll." Like, I wanted to be that guy that'd be like, "Okay, bop, 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 bop." Like, that's what I wanted to be, right?
Mhm.
But others are saying, man, screw all that. You need to be good at making these TikTok videos, these Instagram videos, these skits. So how would you advise an up and coming trainer, considering those two options and directions to go?
Cheesy answer is both, but I get when somebody says that, and I've asked that question before for engagement on social media. I've seen trainers who are better at social than in-person training, and they still get business. And to your point, it goes to the intent. Like, are you trying to be relevant and make an impact, or are you just trying to get income? And I think the integral trainers should work on their skill set as a trainer first. I think they should work on their craft first. And once you get that craft, have that, then go talk about it and go try to get more clients and try to help more people. But why help people if you're not helping them in the best way possible?
Right.
And we
Right.
don't we want a doctor to be updated on their knowledge. We want physical therapists and all these other professions to be updated in their certifications and their knowledge. I think we should hold ourselves to the same standard, even though we don't have as many certifications in this field, in this industry. uh, I do think I think P is sharp in a lot of his statements. I disagree with him, and we disagree often in person. Like, and I didn't do it on the comments, but what I would say is $100 an hour is good. Now he's in a different ball game because he's working with TikTok, and obviously it makes more sense for him to do a TikTok than to do a training session if you're trying to optimize for dollars.
Yeah.
But Micah Lancaster, arguably, if not arguably, like the top trainer in this game when it comes to social media, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to actual skill enhancement itself, in my opinion, he charges the same rate that he would charge a fifth grader as a pro. Or whatever that rate
Yeah.
is, I don't know, but it's not $500. It's not $400. Uh,
Right.
so
Right.
you can't say that he doesn't respect his time, right? So there are
Right.
exceptions to that rule, I would say. But I guess the last thing too is when I grew up playing. Maybe for you it was different, but when I grew up playing, like I just wanted to hoop. Like I wasn't thinking about those life lessons or
Mm.
what I can
Yeah.
do long term in my career as often. Like that was secondary. Now I feel like I'm in that phase where it's switching, right? Like it's
Mm.
how can we introduce those things and those principles, which if you look at our Google on my business, man, we have like 100 something 5-star reviews, parents saying they appreciate the life lessons and the
Yeah.
confidence and all this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, Pete, like that wasn't my intent really. Like I wanted to
Mm.
really deliver on basketball and just be who I am and be positive for that kid.
That kid. Yeah.
All that being said, I do think when we are good people, the byproduct is impacting those kids in a positive way.
Hundred
So
percent.
that's what I was
Hundred
trying to
percent.
wrap back around to earlier.
No, 100%. No, again, I guess the last question I got is, I think you mentioned it. You talked about certifications, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like the basketball training industry has too low of a barrier of entry? And what could be done to ensure that when trainers are getting into the industry and they are being given the responsibility of other youth players' basketball dreams and goals, what should be done to ensure that they're able to really give the players what they need?
I definitely think we should have some certifications around it. Now, how would we gauge it and how would we monitor and enforce it? I have no clue, but at least having like your CPR certification or having some other things health wise that would provide, I guess, protection against liability issues, aside from just insurance itself, and then getting to the actual craft and the biomechanics. And there's so many things that we can learn that would be helpful if we had certifications. I doubt that it'll happen because basketball was a poor man's sport, is a poor man's sport, where most
Mhm.
people can go out and play if they want to by themselves. That was the design of it. So, do I see that happening and having those barriers to entry? I don't.
No. Okay. So, in other countries, even in third world countries, places like Dominican Republic, they've been able to create a certification program where
Mm,
you have to, if you're coaching and training, you kind of have to have your badge, so to speak. Um,
well,
do you think that do you think that do you think that the motivation to make quick money would be is the biggest barrier to certification here in America?
I think it would enhance it. No, if somebody wanted to make money, like if some organization wanted to make money, they could throw certifications and these rules that we would need to go through in order to begin training itself. And especially if the Dominican Republic does it, and they have an upper to middle income, right? Like they've enforced that. I'm sure the U.S. could do it too. I just don't think that people see it as lucrative enough to even go after. And that's no shade to anybody in the basketball training industry. I just don't think I don't know that it is attractive enough to those bodies to start to enforce. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, yeah. So like it would have to be enforced, like the NBA or at some type of level like that. Well, I think at some levels, I think this whole NIL situation is going to the ebb and flow of things, right? Is things were too strict. Now things have gotten out of control. Then I think it'll go back into another direction. And I think ultimately, I think the NBA is always trying to kind of fight for control of the American basketball product in some form or fashion. So I don't know what will come out of this NIL stuff. I know there was an article where Trump was going to talk about legislating some of the NIL stuff, which would be interesting with him. Lord knows what he would do, but I'm hoping at some point there is some type of certification and there's some type of real accountability because a lot of the issues that you spoke about at the beginning, right? You named issues that trainers deal with, sales and marketing, finding a gym, and I think those are kind of all oversaturation issues. And I think that if you are going to be in that space, there's certain responsibilities and skills and requirements that you have to have to be able to operate in that space. And I think it's just for the good of the overall product of American grassroots basketball, man. So man, I just wanted just to thank you, man. I know you got a lot going on, but I appreciate your time. In closing, anything that you want to say, and if you can also tell the listeners and viewers how they can learn more about you, where they can find you online.
Yeah, definitely for the basketball trainers who would like to talk about these things and sincerely want to grow. Like you said, there should be a barrier to entry. There should be certain requirements for those who really want to impact the youth and have a chance to do this full time and be in spots where what you're in right now, man, as a really good crew, a part of a really good crew managing. I think there should be certain requirements, right? And I can help out with those requirements. I can help teach anybody who is willing to learn and wants to do this at a higher level. Just find me on Instagram at Myson Jones. Simple as.
Awesome, awesome, man. Thank you, Myson, so much, man. Listen, if you want to really learn the training game and the business game, definitely reach out to Myson. He's got a program that's really, really in depth, that touches all the bases of building up your brand, really scaling your processes, and helping you earn the most money that you can in the training game. Appreciate everyone who listened. Shout out to everybody that's following us, that's been sharing our videos, sharing these podcasts. Big love to y'all. Let's keep getting better every day. Be blessed, and I look forward to talking to seeing everyone soon, and we'll be talking again. Peace out.